Hello, Spirit Clubbies. This is Chad from Common Good. If you've subscribed before to this monthly club membership, then you're aware that usually we just type something up for you. But the thing that we had promised you would be a monthly video where I talk you through the choices that we made and sort of taste them with you. So we wanted to actually follow through with that this month and film just a little bit of a tasting to help guide you through this process. So if you have just opened your bags, you're looking through the spirits, you're watching this video, feel free to pop the first three that we're going to taste into the refrigerator and then keep going with this video in about 10 minutes once they cool down a little bit. And the first three are going to be Suze, Cap Corsa, Kina Kina, and Soleil Aperitif. Once you've done that and they're chilled, come back to this video, we'll start going through them. Okay, so here we are with our first three in the lineup. All three of these have the word aperitif on the label. And so if you're not familiar, aperitif would be the French pronunciation or the French style of a before dinner drink. Aperitivo is Italian, digestivo, and digestivo would be the Italian and French after dinner versions. So these three all have either gentian or quinine or both in it. So we'll start with Soleil, which is a gentian and quinine based aperitif, wine based, best consumed chilled. One of the nice things about aperitifs is that they're going to be slightly bitter, pretty light, and they're going to all kind of aid in digestion, not get you too drunk before dinner, but kind of perfect for happy hours and sunny afternoons. So I hope it is that sort of weather while you're enjoying this. So when I smell it, that gentian comes through really well. So this is going to be in the Auvergne region of France. It is nice and light. That bitterness really comes through right on the palate. If you're drinking it straight, you can feel free at this point, after you've had a sip, to put an ice cube in it. If you got a lemon peel, that might be nice to like twist up and put in there too. But for me right now, I think it's really nice, comes through really easily. Nice and easy on its feet, on the palate. Just the way it is, neat. But I can definitely see how you put some ice in here, you put some club soda in. It's a great before dinner experience. This one, Cap Corsa Kina Kina, this is one of my favorites. So Corsa just refers to, it's from the Isle of Corsica, so it's a Corsican aperitif. The color difference already is pretty clear. This one has cinchona bark, which makes quinine in it. So if you're not familiar with like Corsican wines, one of the beautiful parts of the island of Corsica is that it's a lot of volcanic soil, so that often transfers to whatever's grown there, produced there, in terms of like minerality and acidity. And it already smells a little bit like an aromatized or fortified wine already. It's got that sort of almost like madderized quality. So for me, when you get that the citrus characteristics combining with the cinchona bark, it almost comes through like grapefruity or almost like a peach, like stone fruit forward. One of our favorite things, both of these, all three of these we put into cocktails consistently. We want them to like lean towards that before dinner consumption, the lighter style of cocktail. And here these two share that characteristic of being fortified aromatized wines. When we move on to Suze, it's going to be more of a liqueur. But here you can definitely tell this is made with a white grape. One of my absolute favorite aperitifs right there, Suze. Suze is probably one of my favorite things to mix with agave-based cocktails. Suze, if you're familiar with art, is famous because of Picasso. He has painted a few different paintings of bottles of Suze with like newspapers in the background as political statements. Suze has a picture of a wild gentian root from the French mountains on it. That's not natural. Maybe it used to be at one point derived from a real color, but I'm almost positive. Yes, it does contain yellow number 5 in there. So that's what gives it its color. But it does have some natural yellow from the gentian in there. Yeah, that color is definitely fake. Unfortunately, a lot of products we get do have like added color. Campari has a fake red color in it, but definitely started out not that way. Now, gentian has a really nice natural bitterness. So what's really fun is you'll be able to like compare Soleil and Suze because they do have a gentian forward quality, both produced in different ways. This is more liqueur, this is more aromatized wine. Bitterness comes through very light, but this is one less as a add sparkling water to it, more just like on the rocks, lemon or lime peel. It's perfect. So if you're gonna make a white Negroni, this is a great. All 3 of these would be good in there. Spritzers, all 3 to varying degrees would be good. This is specifically, I think, pairs really well with agave. Both of these pair well with almost any spirits, from rum to bourbon to gin. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you enjoy them. We're going to move on next to our 3 gins. We're going to look at 3 gins today. All 3 of these have something in common. I like to explore themes when we taste things. And these 3 gins have an uncommon infusion there. So all gins are going to be redistillations of various botanicals after starting with some sort of neutral spirit, although there's some very obvious examples of things that aren't starting off neutral. Gins aren't normally just infused products, right? Those are like bathtub gins where you just take vodka and infuse stuff in there. That's not a real gin. Real gin is going to be redistilled with botanicals and ingredients. So all 3 of these start off distilled with basic gin botanicals, and then Glendalough is an Irish gin that is redistilled, and then there's a post-distillation maceration of ingredients to give it this nice, beautiful rose hue. But here with this Irish gin, they use rose petals, wild roses, and a large fragrant heritage rose, the damask rose, to give it its color. So, this is obviously more designed to be consumed in the spring and summer. We have it at least in 1 cocktail right now for our spring menu. These gins, I recommend with all of them to first have a sip. Neat, smell, and when you're smelling with harder spirits, we recommend sticking your nose in there, keeping your mouth open. Try not to swirl it. This isn't wine. When you swirl it, the ethanols, more than the esters, will be lifted up to your olfactory nerve and they'll sting it, right? Are incapable of noticing distinctions for 5 to 10 minutes. So keep that undisturbed. Smell through both your nose and your mouth, and it's very fragrant, this one. Definitely in that, what we call a new international style of gin. Already, this Irish gin has some fresh ingredients that are unique to this region of Ireland, and this just takes it to another level. So you smell the rose petals, you taste the rose, and it's not just a rose water, it's more of like the essence of it. And it's not sweet rose either. It's not overwhelmingly perfumed. It's just, I think, a really nice light touch of rose. Hopefully you enjoyed the same. Next up, we're going to try 2 expressions of Leatherby. We're going to try a Vernal and an Autumnal. Leatherby is based in Logan Square in Chicago. Old colleagues and friends of mine. These it's already a robust style of gin. They're going to be unfiltered, so it's going to have somewhat of a luge effect. If you put ice in it or water, you're going to see it turns a little bit cloudy, sometimes a little bit like white streaks will appear, and that's just from the separation of oils in it because it is non-chill filtered. You'll see that with other non-chill filtered products. Absinthe is probably the most famous one. This one was a spring-summer release in 2019. Their seasonal botanicals that they're including in it is going to be just primarily shishito pepper. So there's going to be a little bit of a kick to it, but it's got that nice green vegetable aspect to it that I think makes it perfect for like rainy spring days. Sunny spring day, rainy spring day. When you smell it, I get more gin botanicals that are classic than I do shishito. You get that hint of greenness, hint of spice on the nose. If you're not familiar, shishito pepper is going to be a Japanese green pepper that's not going to be like that spicy. Every now and then, about 1 in 10 shishitos is going to be like pretty spicy, but when you taste it, that spice is going to live mid-back palate. And then you're just going to feel the robustness of a non-chill filtered gin. I love it. It's got a lot of applications. It's going to give everything a little bit of a kick without being overwhelming. For those of you who are spice sensitive, take it easy with it. Put an ice cube in it, but it's really not going to be that bad. The final gin that we're tasting is Leatherby's Autumnal Release from 2019 as well. I really love this one because it's got 3 different types of seaweed as well as genmaicha in there. So it's got this really nice roasty, toasty, umami flavor to it. It's funky. And for me, the first thing I smell is the genmaicha, more than the seaweed. So that's going to be a toasted rice and green tea. So I get toasted rice. Second thing it smells is going to be the seaweed, and then comes the gin botanical. So unlike these other gins, they're a little bit more downplayed. This one is a little bit more aggressive in its flavor. And the flavor is much more seaweed than the genmaicha. I still get the genmaicha in there, especially on the back, especially as I exhale. So sometimes when we're going to taste through the next hard spirits, you're going to notice that like as you inhale, as you take a small sip, you let the saliva dilute it, you swallow, then you exhale out, and you're going to taste different things in the exhale than you would have in the inhale. And that's because your palate isn't trying to fight with everything else that's on the tongue, everything else that might be like playing with the things that might be evaporating and your tongue is noticing while liquid is still on there. You're going to be a little bit different than when you're just like tasting the vapors that come from exhaling after you've already had a sip. So nice and robust. And I think one of the reasons I included this one, I mean, all 3 of them have these like really weird and fun infusions on them. I find autumn and spring to have like wonderful things in common with it. I mean, there's a little bit more death, a little bit more life, but there's still going to be that like seasonality of like bluster and dreariness that like accompanies both seasons on some days. And I find this one to be very appropriate for the spring. So I hope you've enjoyed them as well. And next we're going to move on to mezcal and finally bourbon. So mezcal can be a category that some people just automatically avoid because, oh, I don't like smoke. And then some people just gravitate towards because either they do love smoke or they realize the complexity, richness, and crazy varietal and varieties that exist within mezcal. So mezcal is that umbrella category in which tequila belongs. And it is less regulated than tequila. You can use multiple different types of varieties and style of production. And so you'll get a wide variance of style, of quality, of flavors, and I love it. So mezcal also can be mass-produced and can kind of destroy sustainability in the process. We're going to start with Ryu. One of the things I love about it, they show the picture of the Mescalero who made it on the bottle. They have a commitment to sustainability, both in the economics of the Mescaleros, the farmers, the distillers, and they also produce a really great product. And it's not crazy expensive. I think up here in the States, I think there can often be misconception about the fairness of trade when it comes to it, mezcal. But I think we're learning more and more as brands are becoming more transparent about the way they do business, what brands are sustainable. I definitely recommend Ryu. So it says 100% artisanal process on here. It shows how many bottles are produced in this batch. It shows when it was done. It's all handwritten. Picture of the Mescaleros on the label. All these things are indicative of what you might expect in there. And so mezcal, you're going to take your the piña from the agave plant, and here you're using 100% espadín, which is the most common varietal used in mezcal. And then they will roast it in oftentimes like a clay oven. They'll sometimes dig a pit underground, cover it, roast it. They're trying to get the piña to the point where it's cooked enough so that we can extract sugar from it. So that's what gives it a smoky flavor, but there's multiple ways of doing it. And that's going to affect, of course, the level of smoke, but also kind of the delicateness of it and what other flavors are going to come through. So here, when I smell it right away, I am going to get that smoke, but it's not overwhelming. It's more delicate. It's more like being, I don't know, at a backyard party with a barbecue or a campfire going, but you're not right there in the smoke of it. For me, I get floral characteristics on there. I definitely get like green vegetable characteristics, almost reminiscent of the shishito pepper gin without the spice, but the flavor. Anyway, Ryu, the bottle is designed definitely for people like me, bartenders, to use in a well. It doesn't have any like crazy designs on it or shapes, and it's easy to use. It's great juice. Highly recommend. Del Maguey, of course, one of the first, if not the first, major brand that highlighted regionality in mezcal and also style. So I wanted to give you a brand of theirs, a mark of theirs that's focused more on the style of things. So Minero focuses more on a production technique here. Because the clay still that they use, which is an old, inefficient still, more wild notes are going to come through, right? Like in a more efficient still, you're trying to isolate the ethanol molecule, and the more efficient you get, the less of these crazy flavors you're going to get. The less efficient, which is usually like older stills, right, because of economics, you're going to get crazy notes. And here, they put on the bottle, you're going to get vanilla. You definitely smell, you get a little vanilla on the nose, but then you get these like, I mean, I get papaya on here. Mouthfeel is so radically different than this Ryu. The flavors are so much more intense and pronounced. This is not in the price range of a normally cocktailable mezcal, a little bit more expensive, but wanted to give you the chance to taste it because it is such a dramatic difference in flavor than here, even though they're both using espadín. This is just a production difference. So mature, twice distilled espadín, 500-year-old technique, ancestral method, fruity, crazy, bold flavors. Love it. Okay, so moving on to our final mezcal and highlighting again the stylistic differences. There's a style of mezcal called Pechuga, and this mezcal is used primarily in like religious ceremonies, but it's where you take nuts and berries and citrus and you're going to hang usually like a turkey breast or chicken breast in the still and let the vapors from the distilling agave run through all that, then you capture it and it's sort of flavored in that way. It's crazy. It's almost like you're doing almost like a redistillation like you would with gin, but with all these beautiful and to I think a United States palate, some really crazy and interesting flavors you wouldn't find in gin. You're not going to run gin through an animal breast as you're going away. But here, they used to put on the label here that it was a vegan pechuga, Pelotón de la Muerte, and they use Criollo and Ancho maguey, or the agave varietals. But here it says that they distill it with citrus and other flavors. And so it's still their vegan pechuga, but they just use all those flavors without the meat. So they're kind of trying to appeal to a wider market. And I think they took the pechuga off because I think they're not trying to become in competition or to take anything away from the spiritual practices that are normally there. And I think especially for people in the States to consume pechuga, and especially call it like a vegan pechuga, might be a little bit offensive. So, but I would love for you to taste this with me, smell to see if you can smell any of those flavors in there that isn't just part of that like smoked agave. And for me, I get citrus right away. I get a little bit of wild yeast and funk. As I let it sit on my tongue, it definitely gets a little bit more like sweet, spicy flavored. I definitely get those citrus and fruit notes to it. Definitely get like a little bit of nut action in there too. Wild taste. All three of these mezcals are so crazy different from each other. And I hope this, whether or not you're a mezcal lover, when you came into this, or this would be your first time begrudgingly trying mezcal, I hope this gives you a good example of 3 expressions of this beautiful, wide-ranging and unique spirit. Bourbon. I have a special connection to the spirit, as I used to run a bourbon-focused whiskey bar in Chicago, and the more I taste it, the more I really think that it does have a wider range of flavors than you might be aware. And one of the best ways, I think, to try the unique wide array of flavors that it can offer is by tasting single barrels. It's an expression of bourbon that didn't really exist until the 80s, when Blanton's came on the market. But here we have 3 single barrel expressions. One of them we chose, 2 of them are unique. But normally even small distillers around here, when they say small batch, it might be 10 barrels. Sometimes a larger distillery like Beam Suntory, they might use like 2,000 barrels and call it a small batch. It doesn't mean anything, but we do have Larceny small batch. That's actually a single barrel that Common Good picked out. It is a wheated bourbon. And so wheated bourbon means that wheat is a secondary ingredient. It's a second ingredient in a 3-grain mash bill, which is typically corn. Rye and malted barley, when it's wheated, that means they've replaced rye with wheat. So when I smelled this, tasted it, it has a natural sweetness to it. Because rye is naturally a little bit spicier. Think about like rye bread versus like a whole wheat grain bread. You're going to get a little bit of that more, whole wheat sweet taste, whereas rye has got that like spicy kick to it. Not like spicy like jalapeno, but spicy in that it's got that zest and zing. So Larceny was designed, I think, as John Fitzgerald. This brand, the old Fitzgerald brand that was originally at the Stitzel Weller Distillery, it was J.P. Stitzel, the Scottish immigrant's idea that wheat would interact better with oak and have the caramelized sugars from the oak bring out more sweetness with the wheat. So this was that project, then transferred when the brand died and was sold off to Heaven Hill. Larceny was the byproduct of that after a few other sort of brand iterations. This was sort of what they settled on. Larceny, this bottling, this barrel is actually one of the last ones that was ever made. There will not be another one, as far as I know, done in Illinois or the United States for the foreseeable future, as they're focusing on other products. So I hope you like this. You'll never get it again. John J. Bowman. So one of the things I love about this, and I'm opening up a brand new bottle for this, but one of the things I love about the Bowman brand is that it is Virginia-based, but distilled in Kentucky at Buffalo Trace. So you've got the skill and expertise of known and loved distillers, aged in Virginia. And they put so much, pardon my French, bull crap on this label about pioneering and this like kind of ridiculous story. But the interesting thing to me about Bowman's is that they do a lot of experimentation with oak and aging, and some of their products can be a step above Buffalo Trace's standard lines, even though it's basically the same thing, just aged differently. Because as we actually learned from J.P. Stitzel, oak management has so much to do with how the final product tastes. And Bowman has won a few amazing awards in the past few years with like their gingerbread release. But this that you're about to taste is your single barrel. So here, I get a yeast note. And the yeast note is common in almost all Buffalo Trace distilled products. This yeast that they use always, to me, brings out cherry. There's cherry cola. We have a single barrel Buffalo Trace that brings out almost like a cherry cordial for me. A little more cherry pie because I get the grains like in the crust, almost like a sugared crust of cherry pie in a latticed form in my mouth. It is super delicious, 100 proof that comes in at, so slightly higher than the Larceny, which is rated at 92 proof. Now we're going to move on to a newer one for me, at least. This is Wilderness Trails single barrel of their Family Reserve, which is the Christmas barrels, 11 Pipers Piping, they call it. So this barrel is 4 years and 8 months old. They do a light char. They give the yeast strain and the rickhouse number. Those things don't mean a lot to me right now, but this is sweet mashed, and that's a big difference between these. Sweet mash is a way for them to control each product separately. Sour mashing is sort of when you take the used mash and you use that as sort of a fermentation starter in small amounts to the next batch. That way you're guaranteeing some sort of consistency in yeast strain and flavor profile. Here they can say, you know what, we're going to contract out of this laboratory a specific yeast strain, and we're going to start over. We're going to use that yeast to create that enzymatic reaction in a mash bill, and boom, it's going to start fermenting. It's going to take this amount of time when we know at this day it's going to be good to go, and we're going to make that beer into a whiskey. And so there's something that I really love about that. There's only 218 bottles of this produced, which is super crazy because a lot of batches are a lot higher than that. Not necessarily in barrels, but in batches. But this 4 year, 8 month old bourbon that's clocking in at 117 proof, smell it with me, but keep that mouth open because the high proof is going to get you. So much more caramel, vanilla, butterscotch. The oak flavors are coming through a lot more. And this is going to run right around the same age, probably a little bit younger than these other two expressions. About 2 years younger than Larceny. Unclear about Bowman, but I think probably about 2 years younger than that as well. But I would call it a compliment to the distillers and the oak management here that they're able to produce such wonderful, unmanipulated but mature flavors within this younger bourbon. Non-chill filtered, incredibly sippable at this proof. Still good over ice, but I hope you've enjoyed the uniqueness of these three flavors and what different yeast strains, different aging techniques in oak can do to a bourbon. Cheers.